morning, 6th grade. Welcome to your Monday reading class. I hope you had a great reading. If you don't have your Esperanza book, you should go and find that. And you'll also need your reader's notebook today. As I talk about vocab, you can open up to your page that we started on Friday that looks like this, situational irony. If you find yourself watching this video and you have no idea what situational irony is, you should go back to Google Classroom and click on the Friday video, okay? Friday was the 27th, so it'll say reading 3-27-20. You'll need to watch that video and follow along before you watch this video. Okay, we're gonna get right into it. First, we're gonna start with our vocabulary word. Our vocabulary word today is irritable. Here's our vocab card. It has two parts. It has a root and then it has the suffix, which is able, A-B-L-E. Anytime you see a word with the suffix able, it just means capable of. And if you can tell by our little picture down there, the girl is looking a little irritable. Actually, they both look a little irritable. They look annoyed with each other. So irritable just means having a tendency to be easily annoyed or made angry. And I'm guessing that maybe a few of you have experienced this in the last week. Spending all of that time with your family, you might be irritable. So your job is to look for, in the book, a character who is irritable or easily annoyed. Okay, and when you hear that, go ahead and write it down in your reader's notebook. Just to review, other words to look for that have been our vocab words are privileged. Remember, that means having rights that another person doesn't have. Esperanza, before her dad died, was very privileged. And then the other vocab word we talked about is resurrected. And we talked about that with the phoenix, the bird that resurrected from its own ashes. So those are some vocab words to keep in mind as we read. We have been learning that good readers pay attention to author's craft when they read. And today I'm going to teach you that good readers continue to think about author's craft as they read. And one aspect of author's craft is this idea of situational irony, or how an author uses irony to reveal their message. Situational irony, if you don't remember, occurs when something in a story directly contradicts the character's expectations. Now, in our own lives right now, I think there is some irony. We have situations going on that directly contradict our expectations. Like, you expect to go to school every day, but instead I'm teaching you from my living room. There's some situational irony in that situation. Watch me. I'm going to read a little bit and then I'm going to model how I would come up with some examples of situational irony in Esperanza Rising. So times where she expected her life to be one way and it turned out very different. Okay, so your reader's notebook should be open. We're going to compare the now means after her father's death, the then means before her father had died. And anytime I write something down on the whiteboard, you should be writing it down in your reader's notebook in that neat, readable handwriting. So go ahead and open up your books to page 72, and we will get started today. Okay. I'm on page 72 when it says cliqueta under the little squiggle. Cliqueta, cliqueta, cliqueta. The song of the locomotive was monotonous as they traveled north, and the hours seemed like Mama's never-ending ball of thread unwinding in front of them. Each morning the sun peeked over the spur of the Sierra Madre, sometimes shining through the pine trees. In the evening it set on the left, sinking behind another peak and leaving pink clouds and purple mountains against the darkening sky. Think about how the author wrote that right there. You could use that in that kind of writing in your author's writing journal, describing the things that you're seeing. When people got on and off, Esperanza and the others changed off. I'm going to reread that. When people got on and off, Esperanza and others changed their seats. When the car filled up, they sometimes stood. When the car was less crowded, they put their bags under their heads and tried to sleep on benches. At every stop, Alfonso and Miguel hurried off to the train with a package. From the window, Esperanza watched them go to a water trough, unwrap an oilcloth, and dampen the bundle inside. Then they would wrap it in the oilcloth again, board the train, and put it carefully back into Alfonso's bag. "What is in there?" Esperanza finally asked Alfonso, as the train pulled away from yet another station. "You'll know when we get there," he smiled, and a knowing look passed between him and Miguel. Esperanza was annoyed with Alfonso for taking the package on and off the train without telling her what was inside. She was tired of Hortensia's humming and weary with watching Mama crochet, as if nothing unusual were happening to them, but most of all, she was bored with Miguel's constant talk about trains. He chatted with the conductors, he got off at every stop and watched the engineers, he studied the train schedule and wanted to report it all to Esperanza. He seemed as happy as Esperanza was irritable. There's that vocabulary word. She's easily annoyed on this train ride. Top of page 74. "When I get to California, I am going to work for the railroad," said Miguel, looking anxiously towards the horizon. They had spread pieces of brown paper in their laps, and they were eating pepinos, cucumbers sprinkled with salt and ground chilies. "I'm thirsty. Are they selling juice in the other car?" asked Esperanza. "I would have worked at the railroad in Mexico," continued Miguel, as if Esperanza had not tried to change the subject. "But it's not easy to get a job in Mexico. You need una palanca, a lever, to get a job on the railroads, and I had no connections, but your father did. Since I was a small boy, he gave me his word that he would help me, and he would have kept his promise. He always kept his promises to me." At the mention of Papa, Esperanza felt that sinking feeling again. She looked at Miguel, and he quickly turned his head away from her and looked hard out the window. But she saw that his eyes were damp. She had never thought about how much Papa must have meant to Miguel. It dawned on her that even though Miguel was a servant, Papa may have thought of him as a son he never had. But Papa's influence was gone. What would happen to Miguel's dreams now? "And in the United States?" she asked quietly. "I hear that in the United States you don't need una palanca, that even the poorest man can become rich if he works hard enough." Okay, we're going to stop there for a second, and I'm going to give you an example of what you maybe could write down for situational irony from that section. So, when the book said that Miguel seemed happy thinking about his future and Esperanza seemed very irritable, I was thinking this was ironic because at the beginning of the book, it was flip-flopped. Esperanza was very excited looking at her future, but Miguel was irritable about this future. And this helps me understand that these guys are kind of switching places in the book, Miguel and Esperanza. So, on our list, we're going to write what I just said about Esperanza and Miguel. So now, I'll move out of the way. Miguel is excited about Okay, go ahead and pause and write that down. I'm going to erase it here pretty quick, so pause it so you can get that written down. Okay, we're going to start reading again on page 75 under the little sorrel. We're going to continue to look for examples of situational irony. Okay. They had been on the train for 4 days and nights when a woman got on with a wire cage containing 6 red hens. The chickens squawked and cackled, and when they flapped their wings, tiny russet feathers floated around the car. The women sat opposite Mama and Hortensia, and within minutes she had told them that her name was Carmen, that her husband had died and left her with 8 children, and that she had been at her brother's house helping his family with a new baby. "Would you like dulces? Sweets?" she asked Esperanza, holding open a bag. Esperanza looked at Mama, who smiled and nodded her approval. Esperanza hesitantly reached inside and took out a square of coconut candy. Mama had never permitted her to take candy from someone she didn't know before, especially a poor person. "Senora, why do you travel with hens?" asked Mama. "I sell eggs to feed my family. My brother raises hens and he gave these to me." "And you can support your large family that way?" asked Hortensia. Carmen smiled. "I am poor, but I am rich. I have my children, I have a garden with roses, and I have my faith and my memories of those who have gone before me. What more is there?" Hortensia and Mama smiled, nodding their heads, and after a few thoughtful moments, Mama was blotting away stray tears. The three women continued talking as the train passed fields of corn, orange orchards, and cows grazing on rolling hills. They talked as the train traveled through small towns where peasant children ran after the caboose just for the sake of running. Soon, Mama was confiding in Carmen, telling her all that had happened with Papa and Tia Louis. Carmen listened and made clucking noises like one of her hens, as if she understood Mama and Esperanza's problems. Esperanza looked from Mama to Carmen to Hortensia. She was amazed at how easily Carmen had plopped herself down and plunged into intimate conversation. It didn't seem correct somehow. Mama had always been so proper and concerned about what was said and what was not said. In Aguas Calientes, she would have thought it inappropriate to tell an egg woman her problems. Yet, now she didn't hesitate. "Mama," whispered Esperanza, taking a tone she had heard her mama use several times, "do you think it is wise to tell a peasant person our personal business?" Mama tried not to smile. She whispered back, "It is all right, Esperanza, because now we are peasants too." Esperanza ignored Mama's comment. What was wrong with her? Had all of Mama's rules changed since she boarded the train? Okay, I want you to pause the video, and as it's paused, go ahead and write down an example of situational irony that we just read about. Hit pause. Okay, I'm going to write down what I thought you could have written down. You can keep yours or you can add mine. It's whatever you want. But something I thought that we could add that was an example of situational irony is that Mama is not concerned about sharing her problems with a stranger now. So, Mama not and I use that word again, peasant. But Esperanza says that before, Mama was very proper. She wouldn't share her problems with a stranger, so she was very careful about what was being said. Whoops, Daisy. We'll have a super sturdy whiteboard. There we go. Okay. I'll get out of the way. Go ahead and pause the video so you can write that down. Okay, I'm going to erase it now. If you need it, go ahead and go back and pause. Sweet. Okay, we're going to pick up on page 78. When they pulled into Carmen's town, Mama gave her three of the beautiful lace carpetas she had made. For your house, she said. Carmen gave Mama 2 chickens in an old shopping bag she tied with a string. For your future, she said. Then Mama, Hortensia, and Carmen hugged as if they'd been friends forever. Buena suerte. Good luck, they said to one another. Alfonso and Miguel helped Carmen with her packages and cage of chickens. When Miguel got back on the train, he sat next to Esperanza near the window. They watched Carmen greet her waiting children, several of the little ones scrambling into her arms. In the front of the station, a crippled Indian woman crawled on her knees, her hand outstretched towards a group of ladies and gentlemen who were finely dressed in clothes like the ones that used to hang in Esperanza and Mama's closets. The people turned their backs on the begging woman, but Carmen walked over and gave her a coin and some tortillas from her bag. The woman blessed her, making the sign of a cross, top of page 79. Then Carmen took her children's hands and walked away. She has 8 children and sells eggs to survive, yet when she can barely afford it, she gave your mother 2 hens and helped a crippled woman, said Miguel. The rich take care of the rich, and the poor take care of those who have less than they have. But why does Carmen need to take care of the beggar at all? Said Esperanza. Look, only a few yards away is the farmer's market with carts of fresh food. Miguel looked at Esperanza, wrinkled his forehead, and shook his head. There's a Mexican saying, full bellies and Spanish blood go hand in hand. Esperanza looked at him and raised her eyebrows. Have you ever noticed, he said, sounding surprised, those with Spanish blood who have the fairest complexions in the land are the wealthiest. Esperanza suddenly felt guilty and did not want to admit that she had ever noticed or that it might be true. Besides, they were going to the United States now, and certainly it would not be true there. Esperanza shrugged. It is just something that old wives say. No, Miguel. No, said Miguel. It is something that the poor say. Okay, we're going to stop there. I want you to pause and write in your journal another example of situational irony that we just read about. So go ahead and pause. Okay, welcome back. An example of situational irony that I thought of in this kind of important conversation between Miguel and Esperanza is that now, because they're going to the United States, Miguel will have the opportunity to kind of rise up in social status or in class, like we talked about when we read the History of Mexico article. But then back in Mexico, Miguel didn't have a lot of chances because of his bloodline, because he was one of those people in the servant class. He was an indigenous Mexican. He didn't really have the opportunity to move up and become the wealthiest. So under now, you can add this, or you can just keep what you came up with on your own. So in the U.S., Miguel will have the chance to better his life, but in Mexico, those with Spanish blood had the best lives, typically. I'm going to use that vocab word, privileged. Okay, go ahead and write that down. I'll get out of your way. Oh, deep. Okay, pause it if you need more time. So here we're talking really about money, okay? So Miguel thinks that he'll have a chance to earn more money in the U.S. while in Mexico, it was really based on your bloodline, who were the wealthy ones and who were the poor ones. Okay, 6th grade, that is all we are going to read today. Tune in tomorrow to hear the next section of Esperanza Rising. And when you're reading later today, whether it be by yourself or with a younger sibling, maybe before you go to bed, I want you to think about author's craft. What kind of devices the author is using to get their message across. Okay, Pan Munoz Ryan is using this device of situational irony to try to share her message. Okay, enjoy the rest of your Monday. Bye.